Livity, livity, live, yo. And live?
Hi there, Tackler. Welcome to Disney Deep Dive, where each week we dive into the history, story, and details of the Disney parks. I'm Leah.
And I am Stefan.
He's Stefan. People are going to be like, wait, it is Stefan. And they're going to start calling him Stefan.
Figure it out.
It's not Steven. It's not Stefan. It's Stefan. All right. So, as I mentioned, this is Disney Deep Dive, and we are going to be talking about It's a Small World. So, we always start every episode with our own personal experiences with It's a Small World. Mine is that I remember riding it the first time I ever went to Disney when I was 11. And I remember knowing about it ahead of time too. I think just because whenever they have an episode of a sitcom or something, they always go to Disney, especially back when we were kids. Mm-hmm. They would always go to Disney, and like Full House went, Family Matters went, all of these kind of shows. And they always go on It's a Small World because it's a classic ride. Even the reference in Friends, they get kicked out forever. So I remember knowing about it ahead of time and riding it. And our shop, which is currently on hiatus, but it's Small World Shirts Co., and I like it. I know the song can get annoying. I know the ride is long, but it's a nice break. It's fun. I like seeing all the details. The kids like it. Quintessential Disney. I'm a fan. Mm-hmm. And I love the song and the message. It's great.
I don't remember going on it as a kid. I know we did because I have vague memories of like being in it, and it never changes. So like I do remember being there, but I don't remember what I was thinking or feeling or anything like that. So my most recent memories when we went to Disney the last time, at Disney World, of course, and going through it then, and I thought it was fine. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice break. Kids really like it. Mm-hmm. It is funny how long it is. Like it's long, but then when you go on it, like never ends long.
Yeah, I was just like more intrigued by like all of the details and like all of the just how much there is in that ride. Mm-hmm. Excuse me.
I love the message behind it too, especially like right now and like the current, especially here in America, we're going into it's an election year and all these things are. I like the idea. I like the idea of like one moon, one sun. It's a small world. Like I like that message. It's nice and it still stands today for kids, and I think it's great.
Because there's a lot of like I think what's cool about it is a lot of it is like the same. And we'll get into this, but like, the song is the same throughout, and a lot of like the characters and stuff are doing the same motions, but there's a lot of them, and then there's a lot of little details within that, and I think that's fun to look at. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a cool thing to go through and check out and just experience.
Yes. I'm going to note before I forget that we are out of printer ink and printer paper. We do a lot of printing around here. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to both be using our cellular devices to read our Google Docs. It's weird. The first thing it says is, do you want to read it?
Oh, yeah. There's some graffiti on the script that says, I love you, Stefan.
Somebody hacked into your Google Doc.
Some vicious graffiti put on the top of my Google Doc. Who did that? I wonder.
Yeah. But if you do not know, It's a Small World, you probably know. But it is a water-based dark ride. So, yes, it qualifies as a dark ride. And it is at Fantasyland at the various Walt Disney parks and resorts worldwide, featuring 300 audio animatronic dolls and a very, very famous theme song that promotes world peace.
So yeah, that basically sums it up.
Peace on Earth. Show's over.
Thanks for watching Disney Deep Dive. We'll see you next week.
Hope someone hopped off the live chat. If you are live, let us know where you are watching from. If you are watching the replay, let us know as well. Let us know if you are a fan or if you don't like It's a Small World. Even if you don't watch this, because there's some really interesting history and stuff from this ride. So even if the ride annoys you, hang on tight. It's going to be a wild, dark ride. Okay.
So, in the beginning, our story begins. Where else but the 1964 New York World's Fair, where so many of our stories begin.
We really do need to do a whole episode on that.
I know, just to sum everything up, but Oh boy, I'm still coughing.
Uh-oh. All right.
But here we are again. Imagineers were already working on projects for Ford, GE, and the state of Illinois when Walt got a last minute call from representatives from UNICEF, which, if you don't know, UNICEF is the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. They help kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically it. They wanted to have some sort of like pavilion at the World's Fair. They wanted someone to make something for them so they could be represented there, but they couldn't find anyone to do anything. So they contacted Walt Disney, and Walt was a frequent contributor to UNICEF. He contributed year after year, so he believed in their cause, he believed in what they stood for, and he immediately said, "Yeah, absolutely, we'll build something for you." Now all he needed to do was acquire some funding for the project. So Walt reached out to his friend, actress Joan Crawford. Why would he reach out to Joan Crawford, you ask? Well, Joan was a member of the Pepsi Company's board of directors, and she was the widow to the company's former president, Alfred Steele. So she was heavily involved in Pepsi on the board of directors, and she was a longtime friend of Walt Disney. So he reached out to her and said, "Hey, we need a sponsor for this." And they were looking to sponsor someone anyway. So it all kind of worked out. Um, Now, this was late in the game. Like I said, it was a last minute call. Disney already had all of their projects basically almost done for the fair. So,
And covered, sponsored.
oh yeah,
Too.
yeah, and sponsored, covered, completely covered. So they were ready to like set up and go, and then they got this call. So it's like, okay, well, yeah, we can do this. Pepsi agrees to do it because they really don't have any time to decide anything else. So Joan Crawford basically convinces them, like, listen, we don't have any time. Let's go with Walt Disney. He can do it. He can get it done in the amount of time and represent us proudly. So they agree and they give their support to Disney and they move forward with the project. So, with all of the necessary pieces in place, Imagineers not only had 11 months to complete the attraction. So, think of It's a Small World right now in your head. They had 11 months to not just build it, like, because it's like, okay, if you have this idea and you know what it looks like, you know what it is, like, yeah, let's recreate it. They had to come up with the idea,
Mm-hmm.
create the idea, evolve it into what it is today that we see,
Hold the
and then
research
build
source.
that
Yeah.
in 11 months. So,
It's not a lot of time.
quite the time crunch.
Yeah. And Walt came up with the initial idea that it would be a boat ride that would tour through the different nations to see all of the children all over the world. And then he tasked Raleigh Crump with bringing this vision to life in a series of sketches.
But much like with the Tiki Room and the Museum of the Weird and the Haunted Mansion, if you watch our episodes on those, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yes, linked if you want to watch all of our Disney deep dives or pick and choose. They are linked in the description box.
Unfortunately, Walt thought Raleigh's designs were just too out there and not in line with the vision that he had, which is something that happens, like I said, over and over again. So it's interesting that, I mean, obviously he was a very talented guy and he was contributing a lot, but it seems time and time again he presents initial sketches for things and they're just like, what is this? It's too weird.
Mm-hmm.
And they just throw it out.
Yeah, like he obviously, I mean, he stayed, like he stuck around. They respected his work and he obviously was very talented. But yeah, they were like, okay, that, but then way tone it down. Oh, I'm hopping over to the live chat to say hi to Gigi. Hey, Gigi. We are talking all about It's a Small World tonight.
Yeah, so I wouldn't like obviously like he does good work and he did good work and he produced all sorts of amazing pictures and designs and sketches, but also at a it seems like at a certain point you know what you're getting with him. So just stop asking him for things and then being like, "Oh, this is too crazy." When you say this is too crazy every time, it's like, well, then just expect that and then stop asking for it unless that's what you want.
Yes.
I don't know.
But also him, like, the same, you can flip it around too and be like, stop giving him all this crazy stuff and tone it down. Come on.
Well, it's your style.
Raleigh.
Style.
Yeah, that's true. You know that. You're the artist.
So Walt then turned to Mary Blair, who we've mentioned before on this show many times, and whose art book I still want to get and have yet to purchase. But Mary's unique use of
Stefan's
color.
going over here.
Gift ideas. Mary's unique use of color and shapes can be seen throughout the ride, and it's all very distinctly her. Like very simple shapes with very like solid colors, and I'm not even like like they're just like out of the tube colors, like very bright, mixed with matched with colors that you wouldn't expect. It's a really cool mix, and that's seen throughout her work. So the design of the children specifically, like the adult children, the players, the actors, with their big heads and their tiny features, that came directly from a series of Hallmark note cards designed under the Walt Disney label by Mary Blair in the 1940s. So if you look at those cards, they because a lot of them were specifically designed like kids around the world.
Yeah.
So she had done this before, and you can tell a lot of them they all have the same look, and you can tell she definitely just pulled that look and was like, "Oh, use these."
It's cool art. I mean, I can't imagine it any other way. I'm gonna hop over to the live chat again. So something really funny, Gigi, as Stefan was reading that, I was kind of glancing your stuff, and I thought you were saying to us, "Be more specific and please don't divert." And I'm like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" I get it. What you're saying is what the artist could have said, or they could have said to the artist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like give more direction. From what I've like
Exactly.
read though, it seems like Walt Disney is one of those guys who was just like he'd sit down and be like, this, and this, general ideas, general thoughts, make it happen.
Make it happen.
And it was just kind of like you just do it. So to someone who's like, well, I'll make it happen, but I have my own style, like he's just never going to be happy with you because he has to give more direction to you, and he's not going to do that.
I think this is funny because we've talked about this so many times personally. Is you totally get the artist perspective, whereas then like I get the more like businessy side of it perspective. Not that you're not businessy, but like I don't know. It's interesting because since you are an artist, you're like, well, tell me what you want.
Yeah, it's like tell me what you want. Otherwise, I'm going to put my own style and spin on it because I have that. And if you're not going to tell me exactly what you want or like give me examples of what you want, I'm just going to do it in the way that I see fit.
Stefan's least favorite thing is like when people use words like make it really modern or really chic. He's like, those are words.
Oh, make it look really cool and like
people
awesome.
say that all the time.
Like,
oh my gosh, yeah.
What do you think that means? It's like awesome and cool are just words. They don't mean anything.
And don't apologize. I'm over in the live chat again. You are part of the conversation. Whether you're watching the replay or live, we love talking to you. So, yes, chime in. It's so much more fun that way.
Okay, so moving on. So Mary Blair took over a lot of like the overall design work of the look of the ride, how it was going to like the look and feel, color scheme, whatnot. But Raleigh was still involved, and he was tasked with helping Mary on the project. But he also had a very special project, like specifically him, that he had to work on. Walt needed some sort of a lure, like a giant, unique art piece out front of the attraction to draw people in because, it's a hard thing to sell because you can put a sign up and say it's, at the time it was called Children of the World, but you could put that up and it's like, okay, what's that? Whatever. No one's going to be racing
it's
over.
It's not like an exciting thrill ride or something.
Yeah, so they needed something that would draw people in.
Makes sense.
What Walt was thinking was like a giant art piece and like an art display or something that people would see and be like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. Let's go see what is in here. Raleigh was always creating little like mobiles and models with things that would spin and move and twirl, and they were all very intricate and really interesting. And he had these like set up around his like desk and stuff in his like office space at work. It was just the type of thing Walt wanted. So they dubbed this project the Tower of the Four Winds. And based on the concept model Raleigh created, it was going to do exactly what they wanted, which was draw in interested guests. And there's a video, one of the Walt Disney Presents videos that where like Raleigh has the preliminary design set up, and he's like blowing. It's one of the famous ones because he's like blowing on all the little like windmills and stuff, and they're all like spinning and everything. So you can see that. Just like check it out on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you can check it out.
I love seeing. Oh.
Oh.
All right. Stefan's going to keep talking. Our youngest, long story short, he fell asleep for a super long nap. He doesn't normally nap. And now he's having a hard time falling back to sleep. Okay, I'll be right back.
You had me freaked out. I was like, is there a ghost in our house? And I've been watching like creepy, scary stuff all day on YouTube while I've been working. So I really thought that there was like a ghost there. Oh boy. So the project was called the Tower of the Four Winds, and it was based on the concept that
Just wave and you can walk right
you want to wave, buddy?
Oh, you're not quite in.
There you are.
Okay, go ahead. I'll help you. Here, he's gonna go over here.
Oh, are you gonna sit in here?
Yeah, that's
Oh, okay. You go sit over there, buddy. Love you.
fine. Okay, you gotta be quiet. Okay, here, lay right here.
Let's see. Anyway, it freaked me out too.
Huh?
Gigi said it freaked her out too.
Oh, the door's opening.
Yeah. Well, I read that. And I was like, what? I'm always looking for an excuse to be like, there's a ghost.
Hi, thank you so much for joining. We had a little intermission. Our youngest, we have 3 kids, and our youngest popped in the room, so he was having a hard time sleeping.
Oh, there is a new person.
Yeah, woo!
Hello,
We love
mouse talk.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we're talking It's a Small World, and right now,
I forget where I was. They're building the Tower of the Four Winds. So
yeah, we talked about the mobile, and then right here. Hey, you're good.
So
You're good,
they
you're
outsourced the building of the tower. They didn't build it like in house or anything because it's a giant metal construction. So they outsourced it to a third-party manufacturer, but because the cost of the tower was going to exceed Pepsi's budget, Walt paid out of pocket for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he thought like this is really important. So like I need to.
Yeah, because if
Pay
you
for
can't
this
fill the
out of pocket.
ride, then they're not gonna. The sponsors are gonna be upset. It's not gonna go well.
So once the tower was completed, Walt and Raleigh went over to take a look at it, and Raleigh hated it immediately. He went and saw it and was like, this is garbage. Why, you might ask? Well, Raleigh's original design had the tower as this tall, like, delicate, like, thin-looking, like, piece of, not machinery, but just like, it was supposed to be, like, very thin and delicate looking.
Intricate, kind of.
Yeah. With like thin like supporting bases and like tubes and stuff. But the company that built the Four Winds deemed the original design unsafe, as the entire point of the structure was to catch wind because they wanted to like spin stuff.
Yep.
So they feared that it would not be able to support the structure with the wind coming in with like beams and things that small. Excuse me. So they doubled the diameter of the poles, and he thought it just looked too bulky and it just didn't look good. And he was like, the poles are too fat and it doesn't look as delicate and nice as I wanted. Basically, he was being a pain in the butt.
Paid for it. Walt had paid for it. $250,000 back in 60. What year are we? 63, 64.
Yeah, 63.
So $250,000. So they were not. They were keeping it.
Yeah,
they were
they're gonna
using
use it
it
no matter what.
Yeah.
Like I watched a bunch of videos of him talking about it, and then like read the description of it, and he's basically just being a pain in the butt artist. It doesn't
Stefan
match
can
my
say
vision.
This because he's an artist, and this drives him crazy because it gives like artists a bad name. So.
Yeah, because it's like because they took a look at it and they're like, wow, that's not gonna be safe. We gotta modify this a little bit.
You stay over there.
So they do that, and then he complains about it. So whatever, I guess he's entitled to that. So yeah, $250,000 later, they have their Four Winds Tower, and they're keeping it. So
yes,
no matter what.
Jumping over to the live chat. Hello, thank you for joining us in the live chat, and we are talking It's a Small World, and we're getting to the boats now, so we're very excited about that. And I'm looking over here because our 5-year-old fell asleep, which he doesn't normally do, for like 3 hours. So now he's having a little trouble going to bed.
Yeah.
But he's going to stay right over there.
So now we all know that the World's Fair is where Imagineers created like audio and animatronics and a lot of other innovations that they brought back to the parks. But one thing that they created that isn't usually talked about is higher capacity ride technology. Right, buddy? Yes. This was due to the fact that the New York World's Fair was going to present them with a larger crowd capacity than they were used to at Disneyland at the time. They were looking at having to service over 3,000 guests per attraction per hour. And they hadn't had those kinds of numbers at Disneyland yet, so they really had to up their game in terms of ride capacity.
Yeah, and this is something that we still talk about, even with the newer rides. They're always seeing, how can we get people, I mean, obviously it's great for them for money, it's great for us for wait time. They want to get as many people through as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's a numbers game at that point. So Disney legend Bob Gurr was brought on to work once again with Aero Development, which is the same company who helped develop the Matterhorn bobsled ride. They helped come up with a design for that and build all the rails and whatnot.
Yeah.
Watch our episode on that for more details.
Yeah, shameless plug, hey.
And with their help, they created the People Mover system for Ford's Magic Skyway, the rotating theater for the Carousel of Progress, and the boat system for It's a Small World. Aero had recently developed a new water jet system that was really compact but could still move high volumes of water efficiently. So basically what you're looking at is, at this time, for other boat rides, you had two methods of moving boats through the river. And the first one was like log flume, where you're moving through a series of waterfalls. So you go down the waterfall.
Yeah,
and
little drops.
And that creates the speed and momentum to move you through particular sections.
Yeah.
You drop again, and then you get to where you're going. The other method, in like a tunnel of love situation, which I've never actually seen one of those in real life. So I don't know if they still exist. I've seen them in movies, TV, and comic books, but that's about it. But in those situations,
let us know.
Because apparently they did exist. But in those situations, the water was moved throughout the ride using a series of pumps. Now, those pumps were really big and really cumbersome, and a single pump would control an entire section of the ride. So, if a single pump went down, that entire section of the ride would just stop moving, because the pumps were like pumping water in. They would move the water, they would keep the river flowing. And that's how those rides would work. So what Aero came up with was a series.
Born, everyone. Just say hello and then say good night.
No, I'm not going to.
So what Aero came up with was a series
don't move
of
that, it'll shake the
small jet pumps that would fit within the tracks that would move like lots of water through and keep the river flowing. So much so that if a single pump went down, it wasn't a big deal, because the other pumps had enough power to keep the entire thing moving. Because when you're on It's a Small World, there are no drops. So you're just moving.
And it's a long ride. They got to keep you going through all those rooms. And so at that point, they had the design and the transportation down. And they needed to create all of the characters for all the different nations.
Yeah, they had like the technical parts down. Now they had to make it look good. So time was running out. They needed to create all of these things as quickly as possible, because everything else took a lot of time to figure out, like logistically.
Yeah, and they're that 11-month, which is very short. I mean, if you've heard us talk about other rides, 11 months is no time at all, especially to do everything, not just put it together, but do all the research and all the work involved to figure out what the ride was going to be.
So the solution came mostly directly from Mary Blair, who suggested that the set pieces should look like an arts and crafts project, as if it was built by children, which makes sense because it's a ride about children for children, filled with children. And the children themselves could be represented by dolls to fit the theme, as if the entire ride was one big kids project. This was perfect because all of the dolls could be made exactly the same, like the models, like the basics of them could be made exactly the same, and then just painted and dressed differently to match the country of origin. So instead of making a single unique doll for every single child that they needed, which was over 300, they could just make the same model and then just, dress it up different, paint it different, basically like a paper doll. You're just throwing different things on top of it.
Good for money, it's good for time, it's good for a whole lot of reasons.
Yeah, and it matches the theme, so it's thematically appropriate, which is really cool.
Stop clicking that pen, please.
So the dolls would then be grouped together to perform the same exact movements together. So like like they're doing the same dances, the same twirls, things like that, with like the odd doll standing out to do something unique. So you've got like groups of dolls, so you've got the numbers, they're all doing the same stuff, but then there's like one or two doing something different. So it's like, oh wow, look at the diversity.
Yeah.
Because, just a couple are doing different things, but there's a lot of them there. So in your mind, you're like, wow, there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah, and then they brought in one of my favorite Imagineers, who I love every time we get to talk about her, Alice Davis, to dress the dolls, to do their clothing design, and oh wow, are you gonna read our Google Docs? Are you gonna read our papers? But I love Alice Davis. We've talked about her since episode 1, which was Pirates, and she just was such a force. And so specifically in our very first episode, and she created the costumes for the pirates that would fit on while they were attached to props. So, and she's also the one who pushed for something that they still do, which is multiple outfits for characters. So that if something happens to one, they don't shut down the ride for weeks. They can just be like, quick change and good to go.
But audio animatronics at this point, in terms of people, well, anything really, but really in terms of people, did not exist in Disneyland at this time. So when they decided to include this, the idea of dressing them seemed simple, but it wasn't like an actual problem because they like we just talked about in our Pirates episode, they're strapped to like props and stuff. Like they're wired to the ground, so you can't like lift them up, put pants on them. If they're like hugging something, you can't like take them off, put a jacket on them, stuff like that. So this is where she really developed these techniques to like install like Velcro and zippers and snaps and things to put the clothes on in a very unique way so that it looked natural but still works so that they could take them off and maintenance them and rebuild them. So this is where she really honed those techniques that would come in really necessary later on for like Pirates and other rides like that.
I mean, really, anytime you had to dress animatronics, it's something that you wouldn't really think about, but all of those little extra pieces are going in, and I think she's awesome. I love Alice Davis.
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
And she's a sassy thing too, because she went in there with all those good old boys and was like, "Listen, I think you need to do a few things."
Yeah,
the way I'm gonna say.
All the women involved in
really
well, wed at the time, but then Imagineering all came in and they were like, "Listen up, boys."
Well, and one thing that she did that I think is so smart is that they were like, "Okay, well, here's." Just tell us how much it's going to cost. And so she was like, well, I'm going to double this, for different projects because then I can have backup. So
yeah, because they just asked her how much it would be like costing like overall. So she's like, we'll just double it and then make backups.
Absolutely.
And that ended up saving them for Pirates for sure. And now it's just how they do things. So there you go. So moving on to the music, which maybe is a touchy subject for some people.
Yes, please let us know if you're watching live or if you're watching the replay. Let us here. I've got mine if you want it. I'm gonna take one more sip before.
No.
But let us know if you love the song, hate the song, or just get sick of the song. You can keep it over there. What are you doing? What's wrong with it?
Keeping it over.
Oh, I was gonna say I don't think there's any lipstick or anything.
If you're triggered by it, maybe stop watching.
No, don't tell people to stop.
I don't want anyone to go into a panic attack because we're talking about
maybe
the song.
They won't like being told what to do. So just stop watching and then they'll keep watching.
So, if there's one thing everyone knows about It's a Small World, even if you've never written it, it's the song. Love it or hate it. Everyone knows it, and the ride absolutely would not be the same.
We're not going to play it because of copyright stuff. Stefan's going to sing it, though. He's prepared a piece.
All
right.
Okay. Anyway, so what makes it all the more interesting is that the ride originally it was not planned to have it at all. Like we said earlier, it was originally called Children of the World. Not It's a Small World. They were like, oh, it's Children of the World ride. And they were just going to have the different anthems national anthems from the different countries sung
All
as you
different
went through
nations and-
each section.
Yep.
So as construction of the ride was nearing completion, and the deadline was coming up very quickly, Walt wanted to take a ride through the entire attraction to make sure everything was lining up correctly, looking how he wanted it. But when Walt went through the ride, he said all the different music just mashed together into like this unlistenable noise, and the entire thing was just completely incomprehensible.
Well, picture all the countries that you go through, and a lot of points where you're kind of transitioning from one to another,
Yeah.
or you're in kind of a few, and that would be very. I wouldn't like that.
So in a situation like Pirates, where you go through Pirates and there's like all this like talking going on, and Walt loved that, and he was like, "Oh no, this is great, this is perfect," because you can pick out different parts of a conversation. So you can listen into this one and like block that out. You can listen into this one and block that out. In this case, you're listening to music. You can't block out an entire song.
Well, right. Picture like if you're at a coffee shop or something, you can hear the people next to you, but you're listening to the person that you're talking to, or something like that.
If the radio's on and there's a band playing and there's also like a jukebox that's playing music,
right?
You can't. It just sounds like noise. You can't hear all three, and you can't separate these two from this one. So it just didn't work, and he was like, "Okay, this is nonsense."
Yep.
So,
right. Okay.
He hated it, was like, okay, we got to do something different. So for this, Walt went to the Sherman Brothers, the magical duo, who gave us some of the most memorable songs in existence, from Mary Poppins to the Aristocrats, Aristocats. And originally, they wrote the theme as a slow type of ballad. Now, this was Walt's idea, too. He was like, okay, I need one song that can play throughout the entire thing, but can be sung in different languages. So come up with that. So originally they came up with like a slower ballad. It was more, I mean, I didn't hear it, but it was just like a slower, more like, not somber, but just like easygoing type of song, I guess. But Walt suggested, hey, pick it up, make it more fun, make it more cheery. So they did that. They took the same exact song, just, sped it up and put a little more pep into it.
Yeah.
And that is how we ended up with It's a Small World.
Yeah.
And Walt loved the song so much that it prompted him to change the name of the ride from Children of the World to It's a Small World. And that's how we got it. So originally, no, I already said that. So the ride was completed. And
in time,
on time, of course, and brought to New York for the World's Fair, where it was the single most popular attraction at the fair.
People loved it. They were amazed.
They loved them
Huge
boats.
Success.
They wanted to see the children.
All the
Sing
children
to
for
me,
all the nations.
children.
Yeah. And so then they had to move it, because after the World Fair, it had to go from New York to California.
And this is something we don't really cover a lot.
The logistical.
And I guess we've talked about the World's Fair a ton. This is the first ride presented at the World's Fair that we've covered. Yeah, it is.
Because a lot of times it was the Imagineers had to go work on stuff for the World's Fair, so there were pauses in production of other rides.
And we talk about the concepts that they brought back, like animatronics, yada, yada, yada.
Yes.
This is the first ride we've talked about where they physically have to move it from New York to California.
Yep.
So they're going coast to coast. So they wanted to move it back. They were going to move it back. That was the whole deal. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough room in Disneyland for the ride. To create room, they had to expand the northern part of the park. And I don't know, like, logistically how this worked, like, legally. Like, I guess they just probably bought up all the land in the area. Because anytime I've talked about them expanding, it's like, so they expanded. So I think they just owned a lot of the land there.
Mm-hmm. Well, they bought it very cheap, because at the time
it was orange grove.
Just like when they bought, Kissimmee in Orlando area, like they just did it where it was like super cheap and made sense to have a year-round park.
Yeah, it was just farmland and stuff. So they bought a ton of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they just owned it anyway. But it was undeveloped at this point. And this is where like the railroad track ran through, so that's like where it ended. So they built on the other side of the railroad track. And that's where the ride was going. So for the entrance of the new attraction, Walt once again tapped Raleigh Crump and Mary Blair to come up with the design. And the design at Disneyland is much, 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 much different from Disney World.
Yes, and we both only have personal experience at Disney World. We say this all the time, but
Mhm.
we've never been to Disneyland. So anytime we're talking about our own personal experiences, we're looking at World. But for the ride, Stefan researches a ton, and we watch a lot of POVs.
But it's really cool at Disney World or Disneyland. But what happened to the Tower of the Four Winds? Mystery questions. Well, no one except Walt wanted to bring it back from New York. Um, the higher ups, like the vice presidents and whatnot, they didn't want to bring it back because of expenses, because the thing weighed like 3 tons or
Yes.
something, so it cost a ton to move, and they were like, just leave it, we don't
Yeah.
care. And Raleigh didn't want to bring it back because he hated it.
But just think if you spent $250,000 and you're like, "Nah, man, we gotta have it." But
So they talked
Gotta
Walt into it.
let
They
it-
were like, no, 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 don't bring it back. And he
Yeah.
eventually was like, okay, fine, whatever. So he didn't bring it back. So the new facade of the ride was primarily designed by Mary Blair, and it would represent icons from the world's nations, including the Leaning Tower of Pisa and the Eiffel Tower, which are easy to spot if you check it out. There's a lot more in there, a lot of little like Easter egg things. So look at pictures of it if you've never seen it. Check it out. See what you can pick out. What Raleigh designed was the clock tower with the rotating face. At every quarter hour, the animated figures come out of the clock, and the bell rings and gives you the time.
yeah.
So they do their little dance and do their thing, and then you know what time
We
it is.
have a local clock around here that does that, and it's so cute. The kids love it when they see it. It makes noise every like 15 minutes, but then it actually does its little show every hour, and the kids really like seeing it. It's fun.
Yeah.
But the ride officially opened in Disneyland on May 28th, 1966, which is 2 years after its debut in New York City at the World's Fair. And it was the final ride opening ceremony that Walt himself would attend before he passed away. So that was very memorable.
And it had a really cool like show and everything for the ride opening. It was they had kids, like one kid from every country. I guess every country in the world. Maybe I don't know.
Well, every
But-
country that's on the ride.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
featured
Yeah.
in the-
yeah.
yeah.
Representing in their like national dress or whatever, and they all had like bottles of water from like every ocean in the world, and then Walt had a canteen with water from the rivers of America, and they all dumped them into the river like as like the
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that.
ceremony of
Yeah,
it, and then all the kids got to ride it first, so that was really cool.
super, super cool.
So updates and refurbishments. Not a lot, really. Well, not a lot, but then a major one. The ride is like seeing like small touches of changes here and there, mostly just like color changes on the outside, like different shades of like blues and whatnot added, but nothing super major. Until 2008, when a major refurbishment was prompted by needing to replace the original flume, which is the flume is like the curved area where the boats sit in. That's the flume, and that was like in like major disrepair and needed to be replaced. So
Which
they
makes
just,
sense after that length of time.
yeah,
I
for
mean,
that amount of time.
it served it had a good run.
So they had to change that. So they decided, okay, we're just gonna change a bunch of stuff. So they completely tore out and replaced the entire flume portion of the ride. Totally rebuilt it. Not a lot of change in there. They just made it like better. They fixed the whole thing up. But the other big piece that needed to be replaced was the boats, and this is kind of the funny part. Because up until 2008, the ride was still using the same boats, the same exact boats that were used at the 64 World's Fair. So they had never changed the boats. Now the boats were made of steel, like solid steel, and then encased in fiber, like a fiberglass shell around the outside, which would be like easy to replace and like or not replace, but patch up and like keep nice, which is how they were able to last for so long.
Yeah.
The thing is, they were really heavy. They floated no problem originally, but they were still really heavy. The thing is passengers changed.
People are a little bigger in 2008 than they were in the 60s as a whole.
The problem they ran into is that everyone riding the ride was way heavier than they were in 1966
Just as
when the
a
ride
society
first opened.
in general, yeah.
So the boats are riding lower and lower and lower in the water to the point where if people like rocked a certain way, the boat would like spill into the water and get swamped and then be stuck. So they were like, okay, the boats are too heavy. We got to make them more buoyant.
Yep.
So to solve this, Imagineers created new boats made out of aluminum covered in industrial grade plastic, which gave the boats the strength and the buoyancy that they needed. So quick fix, and they got to like put shiny new boats in the ride. Kind of sad that they had to take the original ones out, but I mean, what are you gonna do? So then came the incredibly controversial addition to the ride in the shapes of 29 Disney and Pixar characters being added. Kim Irvine, who was the daughter of Leota Toombs,
Madame Leota.
Haunted Mansion, was in charge of the redesign, and she was tasked with adding characters to the ride. Now, keep in mind, it wasn't like she came up with this idea and was like, this will be perfect.
Yeah.
Disney execs were like, hey, throw some characters in there. Like, it's a totally character-free ride. Put them in there.
Yeah.
So, and they only put them in where it's appropriate. So, like, you know, Aladdin goes where it's appropriate. Alice in Wonderland goes in the UK. Things like that. So it's not like they just arbitrarily added characters in there. Like, they put them where they're appropriate.
But people did not like it, and especially like people who are like, they love that ride. It's a classic to them. It's near and dear to their heart. Didn't like it so much.
Yeah, and seriously, calm down. Because, like, people were, like, calling for her job. They were like, fire this woman!
Nothing will drive me crazier than that. Like, obviously, I understand that things happen, but in general, like, if you're messing with people's livelihood, you need to stop. Like, that, you're crossing a line.
And, like, there's no, I don't care what anyone says, there's no room here for anyone to be like, no, we're right. She ruined the ride. Blah, blah, blah. It's a small world. I get it. It's in one of the original Disney rides, but their only reasoning for why, they ruined it is because its message is of peace and world peace and love. And, this commercialism is just ruining the message. I just can't deal with it. Oh, what are we going to do? Get over it.
It costs money to have rides.
That's what you're going to do. You're going to get over it. Your message of world peace is not ruined because someone put Nemo in your ride. Calm down, quit trying to ruin people's lives, and just get over it and ride your ride.
Right?
Right, buddy?
Right? Say, hi there. Say, this is Disney Deep Dive. Okay.
So anyway, that's my rant on that.
Yes.
Calm down.
Yeah.
So, in 2018, then, the rope queue on the outside of the ride was updated to create more space.
That's enough.
And make it more convenient for, like, parades coming by and guests and whatnot. And those were all the updates that it has seen thus far. So, you can ride this ride in every single Disney park. It is a staple, a mainstay in all of the parks. It is something that defines the parks. And it's a thing that it just is not going to go away. Like, they're never going to, like, decide to get rid of it. It's a Small World. Like, this is one of those rides that's staying forever.
Yes.
Like Pirates, like any of those, like, original rides that Walt had a hand in. They're not going to get rid of them.
Lots of people collect pins, stamps, child things. I mean, I've seen some adorable nurseries on it. It's a Small World. It is definitely our friend Sierra. I don't know if you're watching the replay, girl, but she loves this ride and it's her favorite. So it's very special to a lot of people. And I can see why. It's not my favorite, but I do think it's a beautiful ride. And I will certainly ride it every time we go to Disney.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I would love to ride it in the different parks, too.
And the line is never that long. So you can always pop right. I mean, we got there really early. So we popped right out.
Yeah, like you can do it early, quick, or you can do it during a party, quick, grab a fast pass, give an extra one. Like once you know. There are many ways to do it, but we want to thank you for watching, and we would like to thank you for participating. It's a lot of fun when you watch, and also, this feeds right into that, we want to thank Dean from theliveplace.com. He hosts us as well as a bunch of other Disney and family-friendly streamers, including Zippity Doo Dad and Mouse Talk, who were popped in here tonight. Thank you guys so much. I'm sure Dean probably sent you, and if not, thank you. It was really a lot of fun having you here. We hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, feel free to share this if you liked it. We don't typically have a ton of people on live, but we really like chatting to anyone who joins us live, including our friend Gigi, who is here tonight, as she usually is. So thank you so much, girl. And if you have any suggestions, we really want to start planning out on a calendar so that, because Stefan does a ton of research for this. I do some, but he does a ton. And getting this all ready, we want to start planning it out. So let us know in the comments what you would like to see. Right, Sully? Say yeah. Let us know in the comments what you would like to see. And you can also let me know at LeahTackles on Instagram. And you can let Stefan know.
Small World Shirts Co. and the Mitten Print Shop.
Yep, both which are linked in the description box. And thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you have a
magical day.
Bye, guys. We'll see you real soon. Magical night.
Magical night.
Say bye one more time. Say bye-bye. Bye. This is Sully. This is our Sully.
And
Knock it.
Stop.